Have you ever been thrown out of the home you spent 40 years building? Not by a stranger, not by a thief, but by your own child. My son stood on the front porch, holding a new set of house keys. He looked me in the eyes and said, "Mom, this house isn't yours anymore." Behind him, his wife smiled. A moving truck waited outside. Two real estate agents were already measuring the property. The neighbors watched from across the street. Some looked shocked. Others looked away, unable to believe what they were seeing. I looked at my son for a long moment. Then I smiled, not because I wasn't hurt, but because I already knew something he didn't. I quietly reached into my purse, pulled out a sealed envelope, and handed it to him. "Give this to your lawyer tomorrow morning." He laughed. What difference could one letter possibly make? I simply answered, "Everything. My name is Margaret Wilson. I'm 68 years old. My late husband and I built that little white house together, not with inherited money, not with lottery winnings, but with overtime shifts, weekend jobs, and years of sacrifice. Every brick carried a memory. Every room held part of our lives. When my husband passed away, I thought my son, Daniel, would protect everything we had built. Instead, he slowly changed. It didn't happen overnight. At first, he visited every weekend. Then, once a month. Eventually, only when he needed money. His wife, Jessica, always had expensive dreams. A bigger SUV, luxury vacations, designer furniture. She often looked around my modest home as if it were something standing in the way of the life she wanted. One evening, I overheard her whisper, "Imagine how much this property is worth now." Daniel didn't answer, but he didn't disagree either. That's when I began preparing not for an argument, but for the day I feared would eventually come. And suddenly, that day arrived sooner than I expected. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise, not because I had slept well, but because I already knew today would change everything. I made myself a cup of coffee, watered the roses my husband had planted years ago, and sat quietly on the front porch. Every flower reminded me of him. Every crack in the sidewalk had a story behind it. At exactly 9 o'clock, a black luxury SUV stopped outside. Daniel stepped out. Jessica followed him. Both were smiling. Daniel held a thick folder. "Mom, we need you to sign a few final documents." I looked at the folder. "What documents?" Jessica answered before he could. "The house has already been sold." I slowly raised my eyes. "Sold?" Daniel nodded confidently. "We found a great beer. You don't need such a big place anymore. We've already arranged an apartment for you." The words hurt, not because of the house, but because they had planned my future. Without asking me, I quietly asked, "Did I agree to sell my home?" Daniel hesitated. "You signed the paperwork." "I don't remember signing anything." Jessica smiled nervously. "It was mixed in with your insurance papers." For a moment, no one spoke. Then I quietly said, "So you tricked me." Daniel looked away. "It was for your own good." I stood up, walked inside the house, opened an old wooden drawer. Inside was a photograph of my husband, and beside it, a small envelope. I held it gently. Then I walked back outside. "I won't argue." Jessica looked relieved. "I knew you'd understand." I handed Daniel the sealed envelope. "Give this to Mr. Harrison, our family lawyer, but don't open it." Jessica laughed. "Mom, it's too late. The contracts are already signed." I smiled. "We'll see." That afternoon, Daniel and Jessica met the buyers. Everyone celebrated. Champagne glasses were raised. The real estate agent congratulated them. The closing ceremony is tomorrow, Jessica whispered excitedly. We're finally rich. Daniel smiled. It all worked out. Neither of them noticed. Across the street, an elderly lawyer had quietly parked his car. He watched the house for a moment, then looked at the envelope resting on the passenger seat. Written across the front were just 7 words. Open only after the property is sold. Mr. Harrison adjusted his glasses and softly whispered ... I hope you're ready ... because tomorrow, everything changes. The next morning, the conference room at Harrison and Blake Law Firm was filled with quiet excitement. The buyers had arrived early. The real estate agent carefully arranged stacks of paperwork on the polished oak table. Daniel stood near the window, smiling confidently. Jessica couldn't stop talking about their future. The first thing we're buying is a beach house. Daniel laughed. And a new car. Everything seemed perfect until the door opened. Mr. Harrison walked in carrying a single sealed envelope. He looked at Daniel. Your mother asked me to give you one final opportunity. Daniel frowned. What do you mean? The lawyer placed the envelope on the table. This letter was left in my care 3 years ago. It was only to be opened if someone attempted to sell Mrs. Wilson's home. Jessica crossed her arms. This is ridiculous. The sale is already complete. Mr. Harrison adjusted his glasses. Not yet. He slowly broke the wax seal. The room became completely silent. He unfolded the letter ... and began reading. If you are hearing these words ... it means someone I trusted has tried to sell our family home without understanding its true ownership. Daniel's smile disappeared. The lawyer continued. After my husband passed away ... I transferred this property into the Wilson Family Heritage Trust. Jessica interrupted. What's that supposed to mean? The lawyer calmly replied. It means Mrs. Wilson no longer owns the property as an individual. The trust owns it. The only person authorized to approve any sale is the acting trustee. Daniel swallowed hard. And who's the trustee? Mr. Harrison looked directly at him. Your mother. The room fell silent. The bear slowly lowered his pen. So ... You're telling me this sale isn't valid? The lawyer nodded. Legally ... It never was. The real estate agent looked shocked. I verified the paperwork. Mr. Harrison slid another file across the table. The signatures used during this transaction do not meet the trust's legal requirements. The transfer is void. Jessica's face turned pale. No, that can't be true. The lawyer calmly continued. The funds must be returned immediately. The property cannot be transferred, and any forged or misleading documents will be investigated. Daniel collapsed into his chair. Everything he had planned ... The money, the celebration, the future he imagined, disappeared in a single moment. Just then, the conference room door opened once more. Margaret quietly walked inside. She wasn't angry. She wasn't smiling. She simply looked at her son. I warned you ... One letter could change everything. Daniel couldn't even meet her eyes. For the first time, he realized ... He hadn't just tried to sell a house. He had betrayed the people who spent their lives building a home. The conference room was silent. No one moved. The buyers quietly gathered their documents. The real estate agent lowered his head. Jessica stared at the table, unable to speak. Daniel remained frozen. His entire plan had fallen apart, not because of luck, but because he had underestimated his own mother. Margaret looked at him calmly. There was no anger in her eyes, only disappointment. The kind of disappointment only a parent can feel. Daniel finally stood. His voice trembled. Mom ... I'm sorry. I thought I was doing what was best. Margaret looked at him for a long moment. No, you did what was easiest for you. You never once asked what was best for me. Those words hurt more than any punishment outside the law office. Rain had begun to fall. Daniel followed his mother to her car. For the first time since he was a little boy, he didn't know what to say. He simply whispered, "I've lost everything." Margaret looked at him gently. "No, you've only lost money. The real question is ... Have you lost your character too?" Daniel lowered his head. Tears rolled down his face. "I don't want to be this person anymore." Weeks passed. Daniel returned every weekend, not asking for money, not asking for forgiveness, simply helping. He repaired the old fence, painted the porch, trimmed the garden his father had planted decades earlier. Sometimes they worked together for hours without saying a single word. Slowly, trust began to grow again, not because of promises, but because of actions. One evening ... Margaret invited Daniel inside. She placed an old wooden box on the kitchen table. Inside were photographs, letters, receipts, and one faded notebook. "Your father kept this from the day we bought the land." Daniel opened the notebook. Every page recorded a sacrifice, extra shifts, missed holidays, loans they struggled to repay. On the final page, his father had written, "A house is made of wood and bricks. A home is built with love, sacrifice, and honesty." Daniel couldn't hold back his tears. For the first time, he understood what he had almost destroyed. 6 months later, the Wilson family gathered for dinner. No lawyers, no contracts, no arguments, just family. Margaret stood and raised a small glass. "I've made one final decision." Everyone looked at her. She smiled. "The house will remain in the Family Heritage Trust. It can never be sold for personal gain. It will belong to every generation ... as long as they protect it with love and respect." Daniel nodded. "I understand. And I promise ... I'll never value money above family again." Margaret walked over and hugged her son. "I don't need a perfect son. I only needed one brave enough ... to admit he was wrong." As the sun set behind the old White House, Daniel looked at the porch where his father used to sit every evening. He smiled softly. The greatest inheritance was never the house. It was the values built inside it. Because money can disappear, property can change owners, but honesty, respect, and a family's love are treasures that no one can ever sell.